Say his name anywhere on earth, Paul, and somebody knows it. Not because he was an emperor, not because he led an army, but because his life left a footprint so deep that centuries kept stepping into it. And some go even further. They say that after Jesus, no one shaped what came next more than Paul. That's a dangerous thing to say because it forces one question. If Paul had never lived, who could have taken his place? Who else could carry what he carried, survive what he survived? Because Paul didn't earn that name with comfort, and here's the twist. He did not start as a saint. He started as the villain. So before the statues, before the churches, before the legend, let's meet the man. His name was Saul. The city where he was born? Tarsus, a crossroads of Greek culture, Roman power, and Jewish faith. Tarsus was a major city, educated, wealthy, deeply cosmopolitan, and because of that, he was a Roman citizen, a rare privilege. We usually think of Paul the Apostle, Paul the Saint. We see the statues. We see the paintings. He holds a book. He looks holy. He looks clean. Forget that. Paul was a worker, a man of trade. He was a tent maker. Have you ever felt goat hair? It's not soft. It is stiff. It is oily. It smells of the animal. It cuts the skin. It stains the fingers black. Paul spent his youth pulling needles through that tough leather and hair. His hands were stained. They were rough. They were scarred from the knife. They smelled of the trade. Tent making was not poetic work. It was rough, physical, necessary. The Pharisees in Jerusalem, the high priests, they wore fine linen. They smelled of oil and incense. They kept their hands clean. They would not touch a tanner. It was below them, not Paul. Even when he was a great teacher, even when he was an apostle, he worked. These hands, he said, these hands have ministered to my necessities. He did not ask for money. He did not beg. He found a shop. He found the leather. He took the knife. He worked through the night. This is the man, not a soft philosopher in a library, a man who knew the smell of the street, a man who knew the weight of the hammer, a man of leather. He had Jewish blood in his veins, so he didn't stay in Tarsus. He went south, to Jerusalem, the holy city, the place of study. And there Paul became a Pharisee, a guardian of the law, a man of authority. But Jerusalem is restless, angry. A new movement is spreading, followers of a carpenter named Jesus. To the Pharisees, it is poison. And Paul? Paul wants to be the cure. It burns in him, a fire in the belly. Then comes the trial. A man named Stephen, a deacon, a server of tables. He stands before the council, the Sanhedrin, the rulers of Israel. He does not tremble. He speaks of history. He speaks of Jesus. The council erupts. They shout. They cover their ears. Like children refusing the truth, they drag him out, past the gate, to the killing ground. Stones are lifted, jagged rock, heavy enough to split bone. And then the violence begins. This is not a riot, not chaos. It is a ritual. It is the law turned into a weapon. Paul watches. He hears Stephen's voice, clear, even under the screams, "Lord, lay not this sin to their charge." Then silence. Stephen collapses into the dust, broken, still. And Paul, for Paul, this is justice, order restored. He feels satisfied. And it doesn't end with Stephen. Stephen was only the beginning. Paul hunts them, men and women, through houses, alleys, courtyards, dragged out by force, thrown into prisons. His heart hardens, hard as the stones in the pit. He feels strong. He does not know that the first crack has already appeared in his armor. But Jerusalem is not enough. The poison has spread. He hears they are in Damascus. He gets the warrants, gathers his men, and rides north. It is a long journey under a hot sun and white dust. Paul rides at the front. He is the hunter, the wolf. He thinks about the arrests he will make, the chains he will use, the trials, the stones. Damascus is close. He can see the green of the gardens. He can smell the water. Then the sky tears open. It is not the sun. It is brighter than the sun. It is a light that has weight. It is a light that hits you like a fist. The horse rears. Paul falls. He hits the hard ground. The dust is in his mouth. He covers his head. He is blind. The light is everywhere. Then the voice. It is not a thunderclap. It is a voice that speaks to the center of the man. Why do you persecute me? Why do you hurt my people? Paul trembles. Who art thou, Lord? I am Jesus, whom thou persecutest. The name he hates, the name of the dead carpenter. But he is not dead. You cannot be dead and speak with a voice like that. You cannot be dead and shine with a light that blinds the sun. He is alive. And Paul is wrong. Everything he has done, every stone he watched fall, every chain he locked, it was wrong. He was fighting God. Paul lies in the dust, broken. The hunter has become the prey. He opens his eyes, but there is nothing. Blackness. For 3 days he sits in the dark. He does not eat. He sees the face of Stephen. He hears the sound of the stones. He prays. A man comes, sent not by chance, but by Jesus. His name is Ananias. Hands are laid upon Saul. His eyes open again, and with them, something inside him opens too. From that moment, he was no longer the same. He goes to Arabia, the desert. Silence. For 3 years, we do not know exactly what happened there, but we know he listened. He learned, not from men, but from the Spirit. He went in as Saul the Pharisee. He came out as Paul the Apostle. First, he went back to Jerusalem to meet Peter, the rock on which Jesus would build his church. Imagine that meeting. Peter looked him in the eye. He saw the fire. He saw the truth. He didn't see a killer anymore. He saw a brother. They shook hands. Peter and Paul, united. The world wasn't big enough for both of them. Paul then goes to Antioch. There he teaches them who they are in Christ. He gathers people from many nations, different tongues, and distant lands. He brings them together by faith. And it was here, in this city, that they earned the name Christians. Before this, they were just a sect, a whisper. Now they had a name, and with the name came an identity. You are not defined by where you come from. You're not defined by who rules you. You belong to Christ. That identity would change the empire forever. He travels. He preaches. He goes to Lystra, a pagan town of dust and superstition. The crowd goes crazy. They think he is a god. They call him Hermes. They bring bulls and garlands of flowers to sacrifice to him. Paul tears his clothes and screams, "No, we are men like you." But Jewish leaders, men Paul once stood among, travel 100 miles from Antioch to find him. Now he is the one being hunted. They poison the crowd, whispering, "He is not a god. He is a witch. He is a deceiver." The mood snaps. Worship turns to murder. There is no trial. This is a lynch mob. They grab him, surround him, and pick up the rocks. Paul knows this sound. He remembers Stephen. He falls. They do not stop. They pound him, burying him under the weight of hate. They grab his legs, drag him out of the city gates, and leave him on the trash heap for the vultures. The mob leaves. The dust settles. The disciples stand around the body crying and praying. And then a finger moves, a groan. He sits up. He checks his bones. He is bruised, cut, and battered, but he is alive. What does he do? Does he vanish into safety? No. He stands up and he walks back into the city. Imagine the face of the guard at the gate. Imagine the faces of the men who threw the stones. They see a ghost, the man they killed, walking back in. He goes to the inn. He packs his bag. "We must go," he says. "We have work to do." He was made of iron. You can dent iron, but you cannot break it. It was brutal there, rejection and pain. But later in Lystra, he found a son, Timothy, young, timid, maybe a bit fragile. But Paul saw his heart. He took him in and loved him. He didn't just teach him theology, he taught him how to survive. My true son in the faith. He poured his life into Timothy because he knew he wouldn't live forever. He needed someone to carry the torch. Timothy was his tears. Timothy was his joy, the father and the heir. Stones are blunt, but the lash is sharp. In Philippi, a Roman province, there was a slave girl possessed by a python spirit. She could predict the future. Her masters turned this into a business. Every word she spoke made them richer, and they didn't care what it cost her. Paul did not speak to the girl. He spoke to the darkness inside her. "I command you, in the name of Jesus Christ, come out." And it left. She was free, but her owners lost their profit, and they were furious. In the Roman world, slaves were property, and property was protected by law. They dragged Paul to the magistrates, tore off his clothes, and turned the crowd against him, beat him. They used the rods, a leather whip with multiple thongs. Woven into it were pieces of bone and lead. The Jews counted their lashes. But the Romans, they stopped when they got tired or when the commander said stop. Paul took this, not once, again and again. 3 times in his life he faced the rods. 5 times he faced the whip. And when the beating was finished, they threw him into the deepest dungeon and locked his feet in the stocks. And in that place, where most men curse, he sings. But Paul had a secret weapon, a card he could play. He was a Roman citizen, born free. It was a shield. By law, he was not supposed to be whipped without a trial. A Roman citizen was not supposed to die on a cross. He used the law of Rome to carry the gospel of God. He traveled on, to Thessalonica, to Corinth, to Ephesus. But he knew the war was bigger than one man. He couldn't be everywhere at once. He needed a weapon that could cross mountains, a weapon that would endure. So he picked up a pen. He began to write, in the middle of the night, by the light of an oil lamp. Black ink on rough parchment. He wrote to the churches he planted, to the Corinthians, living in a city of flesh and gold, to the Romans, living in the belly of the beast. He poured his fire into the pages. When a church began to fracture, his letter held it together. If wolves came to devour the flock, his letter was the sword that drove them out. He didn't know it then, but he was writing the New Testament. He was building a legacy, a foundation of words that time itself could not erase. Years later, he was arrested again, but this time they sent him to Rome to stand trial. They put him on an Alexandrian grain ship. These were the monsters of the ancient sea, huge vessels carrying tons of wheat from Egypt to Rome. 276 people were on board, sailors, soldiers, and prisoners. It is late in the year. The sailing season is over. These are the dangerous days. Paul warns them, "Sirs, I perceive that this voyage will be with hurt and much damage." They do not listen. He is just a preacher. What does he know about sailing? They set sail, and the wind changes. The Mediterranean turns on them, a northeaster, hard and unrelenting. The sky turns black, the sun and stars disappear for 14 days, 2 weeks of total darkness. The ship is tossed like a toy. Timbers groan and leak. Waves rise like mountains, and the cold cuts deep. Everyone is sick. Everyone is terrified. They throw the cargo overboard, the wheat, the tackle, desperate to survive. But Paul stands on the deck. In the howling wind, he holds the rail. "Be of good cheer," he shouts. "There shall be no loss of any man's life, only of the ship." He breaks bread in the middle of the storm. He eats and he makes them eat. He is the calm in the chaos because panic is contagious, but so is courage. The dawn comes. They see a bay, Malta. They cut the anchors, hoist the sail, and aim for the beach. Crash! The ship hits a sandbar. The bow sticks fast, and the stern breaks apart. They dive into the freezing water. The surf is pounding. Paul jumps too. The old man, the prisoner, he grabs a plank and fights the sea, one kick at a time. He washes up on the shore, wet, shivering, and half drowned. The island natives see the crash and come running to build a fire, and Paul? He doesn't sit and wait. He helps them. He gathers the wood, but a viper, poisonous, strikes and latches onto his hand. The islanders watch. They wait for him to swell, to fall, to die. Paul just shakes the snake into the fire and goes back to work. He does not die. He survived the stones, the rods, the sea. A snake is nothing to a man who has seen the risen Lord. And now, the end of the journey. He reaches Rome. At first, he is under house arrest, preaching and writing, but times change. Nero rules, and under Nero, the faith becomes a crime. Paul is taken down into the Mamertine prison. It was not built for men. It was built for water, a cistern carved out of living rock. There was no door, no stairs, only a hole in the ceiling, a grate. Through that hole comes a single blade of light, thin, relentless. By that light, he writes one last letter to Timothy, his son. In those final days, he writes, "I am now ready to be offered. The time of my departure is at hand." And still he adds, "Yet the Lord stood with me, and he strengthened me." The day comes. They take him outside the city, down the old road to the Salvian waters, a quiet valley. He is Roman, so the cross is not used. The sword is. The centurion stops. Here. There is a block, a stone pillar. Paul looks at it. Paul does not struggle. He does not beg. He thinks of the race. He has finished the course. He has kept the faith. He thinks of the light on the Damascus Road. To me, to live is Christ, and to die is gain. He kneels. He puts his neck on the stone, the smell of pine needles, the sound of the wind. He closes his eyes. The soldier raises the sword, a heavy Roman blade. It is done. His voice was silenced, but his letters are not. Written in chains, carried by hands he would never meet. They are read in every language, in every nation, by millions. His words are still speaking. The tentmaker from Tarsus reaches the world. Paul, the apostle of iron, the man who was blinded, the man who learned to see, the man who taught the world how to see. His life is a message to us all. It tells us that no one is too far away. It simply means that grace is still calling.